Hey everyone, and welcome to Over-Caffeinated. If you haven't watched before, our slogan is like the view, but not terrible. So we have our resident Joy Behar with Justin Owen over there. That's his nickname for this show. So
I would have picked somebody else on that line.
I would too.
Yeah, I think I can be Elizabeth Hasselbeck. I think it's been like 20 years since she's been on the show, but we'll count it. But we have a very, very special guest today, and we are honestly blessed to have our senior senator from the state of Tennessee, Marcia Blackburn. Thank you for joining us, Senator.
I am delighted to join you, and thank you for the great work that y'all are doing. It is so interesting for me to see how Beacon Center has grown, how you pushed policy in the state. So I'm giving you attaboys.
Well, we appreciate that. We've known each other for went back 18 years now. When I was at MTSU, we had adopted then Congressman Blackburn.
That's right.
Our congressman didn't see eye to eye with us on very much, so we would drive to Williamson County and work with her.
But
it's been a long road, but it's been a lot of fun. And
lot of fun.
Look where you've gone now.
I'm telling you, with good help.
That's right. That's
with
right.
Good help.
And we'll insult Justin, call him Joey Behar, but the reason that Beacon is so successful is because of him. I mean, it was a one-man shop, 15 years ago, and how we've grown is all due to Justin's leadership there. So before we start, we normally talk about coffee, which we have Barista Parlor today, a great coffee. Yeah, and a good black coffee. I went to the latte. It's too hot. I don't want to sweat on air, so I felt like the latte was a smart way to go.
It is pedal to the metal time for us conservatives because of all we're having to push back on in D.C. and having to work to get people out of Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And fight back on this Joe Biden, Pelosi, Schumer socialist agenda. So it's black coffee time for me.
There you go. And we're going to talk more about Afghanistan later, so we want to hear your thoughts on that. But before we start, one of the very sad thing happened last week that Phil Valentine, who was a guest on this show, passed away, unfortunately. There was a lot of horrible comments from the left on that. But I want you both knew him. You both have met him at work with him. I want to hear if you have any good memories of him to honor him and his family by. We'll start with you, Senator Blackburn.
Yeah, I think Phil is one of those individuals that you look at and say, this is somebody who was a visionary. And as I was leading the push on the state income tax against a state income tax, Phil called me one day. We were friends. We knew one another. His wife, Susan, like me, grew up in Mississippi and went to Mississippi State. And so he called and he said, hey, can you explain the state budget to me? I said, absolutely. So he came over to the house. We sat down at the kitchen table. I gave him a copy of the budget. I had a copy. We went through the whole thing. And as you all know, education and getting people information is vitally important. So Phil would use that information on the air to speak out against the state income tax. So then we knew they were getting ready to push a vote. This was in 2000. And I called him and I said, hey, is there any way you could broadcast from down here so we can make people aware of what's going on? He said, let me talk to management, see if they'll let us come down. And of course, his book on tax revolt, he recounted a lot of this. And they came down and we wanted people to just come down to the Capitol and wave. And he said, well, why don't you just honk at us?
Yeah.
And that's how the horn honkers were born, is Phil saying, when you pass by, just honk at us and say hi. And as I said many times, that became the symbol for the sound of freedom in our state, was people honking their horns when they came downtown around the Capitol and expressed their displeasure with what the governor and this Republican-Democrat coalition that was trying to force a state income tax on the people. But Phil was right there with that. We continued our friendship as I served in Congress. He would come to D.C. every year when they brought people in dealing with the issue of illegal immigration. Phil was always right there. He was right on the issues. He is going to be deeply, deeply missed. And his presence on air is going to be missed. And I just extend my condolences to his family.
Absolutely. And he's one of the funniest people, too. I mean, there's not a lot of conservative people that are funny on the radio, and he was one of them. Justin, do you have any good memories of Phil?
Yeah, I met Phil a few years later at the Republican convention. I got to work Radio Row, helping get people on the show, and so I spent a lot of time with him, and he was a normal guy off air, too, but he had this larger-than-life presence. As you said, he was funny, but also very engaged policy-wise. A lot of radio personalities, they get involved in the politics of things and throw red meat, but he actually got invested in the issues and learned the issues and worked to educate others. And I think that set a tone for talk radio that allowed groups like us to engage people through the airwaves in a way that we would not have been able to without that. And so, imagine what if Senator Blackburn and Phil were unsuccessful in stopping the income tax, where Tennessee would be as a state. Would be very different.
Be a state with a 6% income tax if they were able to keep it at that.
Yeah.
And it would have, stopping the state income tax did more to define what the future of the economy of this state would be than probably just about anything.
I would say than anything. Yeah, absolutely.
Because it changed the trajectory. It forced state government to right-size itself. And then we became an attractor for businesses to relocate because they were not going to have a state income tax. You look at Nissan with their headquarters, the decisions by Amazon, by Oracle, and what you see repeatedly, what they will say, the fact that Tennessee does not have and never will have a state income tax is the reason we chose Tennessee.
That's great. We should talk about corporate welfare, too, because the state income tax is the reason why they're coming here, because of what you passed. Let's talk about, I think Phil Valentine's a great example, but we're such a divided country right now, and the vitriol you saw when this man died of people who seemed happy that he died, it was really disgusting. And you deal with a lot of horrible people saying just the worst things on social media. And we're in this place right now that it's hard to understand how we got here. What is the way that we fix this? Is there a way that we can get back to kind of where we were? I think the pre-Trump years were, maybe not great, but better. We're just in a place that we're so divided. What is your solution, Senator Blackburn? Is there a way to get back to just talking about policy and disagreeing on issues and not personally insulting other people?
And there should be civility.
Yeah.
Has been lost. And we need to realize that we have some people on the Republican or the conservative side that say, if you're not with me 100% of the way, then you're not with me. And as Ronald Reagan would say, my 80% friend is not my 20% enemy. That when you are with us on the majority of issues, we need to be building that coalition of conservatives that will fight to preserve freedom. Because, as Reagan said, we do not pass freedom along in the bloodstream. Now, I say to people all the time, regardless of what your political stripe is, if you want to make the lives of Tennesseans better, if you want to preserve freedom, faith, family, freedom, hope, opportunity, and the American dream, I am always willing to sit down and work with you. What I will not do is, for the sake of bipartisanship, pass things that are part of the socialist democratic agenda, which we see taking place in this $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, which is only 25% about infrastructure.
Right. They redefined infrastructure in a big way.
Yeah.
Right. And then on top of that, Bernie's $3.5 trillion budget, which turned into $4.2 trillion by the time it was presented. Now we're hearing it's $5 trillion. And then the $2 trillion they've already done in spending. What they're doing is pushing our national debt to the stratosphere. With what they're trying to push, within 10 years, we will be well above $40 trillion in debt. And putting this in perspective for your viewership, if you look at the debt history from George Washington to George W. Bush, our nation's debt was at $10.6 trillion. Then Barack Obama and Joe Biden doubled it. Then Donald Trump added to it, and COVID added to it. And now Biden, in the first 6 or 7 months, is going to push us up over $30 trillion. I mean, this is astounding, the amount of debt. It is as if there is no respect for the taxpayer. It is immoral to our children and grandchildren to say, here you go, here's the tab. I've got a granddaughter that is about to turn 1 year old. Her share of our nation's debt is $83,000.
Unbelievable.
And what does that do to her version of the American dream, her desires, her hopes? Why would we selfishly, in order to get programs that will outlive their usefulness by the time she earns a paycheck, why would we choose to burden our children? Why would we limit their opportunity? Why would we sacrifice their chance of the American dream or of our freedoms? Admiral Mullen, July 6, 2010, said, the greatest threat to our nation's security is our nation's debt. We need to remember that.
And it's interesting, too, the Democrats call infrastructure, right? I don't know why my PlayStation 5 and big screen TV wasn't infrastructure. Everything else was, according to them. I mean, they just made up what infrastructure was. Childcare.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, and there's another socialist, so he wouldn't even like that. So, Justin, what about you? What do you think a way to get back to kind of this?
Well, like that, have these conversations. We should be talking about our debt. We're too busy attacking each other and belittling each other. You know, one of the things we talk about at Beacon internally as part of our core values is we don't call politicians names or question their motives, but we'll attack their policies all day long if we disagree with them. And we need to return to that where we can have respectful debate and healthy disagreement about those policies, but not call people names, not praise when people die and those kinds of things. And it's really sad. And I know we're going to talk about social media, and I think that has fueled it in a lot of ways because people can be anonymous and not have to sit across the table and look at each other when they're having these debates. And that's why I think a lot of times it devolves into vitriol.
Yeah, and that's great. And obviously we've had a discussion with the former governor, Phil Bredesen. We talked about debt. And I mean, it was a great discussion that we don't agree on everything. So the big issue right now across the country is COVID. We recently did a report, which was interesting, that talked about shutdowns and showed that Tennessee and Governor Lee fared just as well in terms of cases as Kentucky did, but we fared much, much better with the economy by not shutting things down. And it makes you wonder, are these shutdowns effective in any way? It showed Michigan did horribly while Georgia did better than Michigan did. And Michigan had more deaths. So my question is, with COVID, were the shutdowns useful in the first place? It seems like no, based on our report. And then secondly, I want to talk about how to get past this. And I know that nobody here is for vaccine mandates, but all three of us are vaccinated. Is it the government's job to kind of push people in the right direction to try to get vaccinated? So Senator Blackburn, we'll start with you. What did you think about the shutdowns?
Well, we know that shutdowns don't work, as you said from the report that you all have done. You look at the states that have come back well and the states that have not. Much of that depends on the leadership in those states and the decisions that they are making. So we realize that personal responsibility is very important. I tell people all the time, I'm vaccinated. I praise President Donald Trump for Operation Warp Speed.
That's right.
That has allowed us to have this vaccine. Thank goodness he challenged the federal government and pharmaceutical companies to get this vaccine done and shots into arms. And what would generally have taken 5 years, they did in 9 months. Amazing. It shows you how the private sector can work. But I'm not for vaccine mandates. I am not for lockdowns. I'm not for putting children in masks to go to school. We know that children are not spreaders of this. I encourage everyone, talk to your healthcare provider. If you are able, based on your medical condition, to get the vaccine, you should consider getting the vaccine. The vaccine works. And we have seen that it works. So I think that that's the way that we should approach this.
Justin, what do you think about the vaccine hesitancy thing? It seems like Vice President Harris was not really for the vaccine when Donald Trump did it, but now that it's Biden's vaccine, she said everyone should take it.
It's safe now.
Do you feel like it's kind of a political thing where it seemed like a lot of the people on the left were scared when it was President Trump? Now people on the right maybe don't want to take it because of President Biden?
Everything's been politicized. The vaccine, mask, the lockdowns, everybody has politicized it, which is part of the problem. When we hear follow the science, follow the science, follow the science, but the science changes when the politics change, right? And so that's frustrating to people. So I think I get it from that perspective. But as you said, I'm vaccinated. I did it because I talked to my doctor and it was the right thing for me. It allowed me to travel and return back to some semblance of normal in this time. And I would encourage others to do that if it's right for them. But as you said, we can't be forcing it through government. That's only going to breed more distrust. What government needs to do is be consistent and stick to, if we're going to trust the science, stick to the science, even if the science doesn't advance your political agenda.
Senator Blackburn, I don't know if you know about the science in Nashville, but COVID doesn't spread past, it only spreads before 9 o'clock. That's why they had to shut down the bars at 9 o'clock, because it only spreads there. If you listen, Mayor Cooper science.
That was really something quite amazing. And just go shut things down, put things in lockdown, simply because it fit your political agenda. And what it ended up doing was causing a lot of small businesses to have to shut their doors. That is jobs lost. That is economic development loss. That is livelihoods and hopes and dreams.
That's right.
And a lot of investment from good people through no fault of their own. They saw their doors shuttered.
And so many of them were nonsensical. Why does a bar spread up at a restaurant not? Why is this business essential and this one's not? It's the government should not be deciding that.
Why does the liquor store get to stay open, but you can't go to church?
It's essential.
It's interesting using that. Yeah, I never understood the liquor store being essential. I mean, I'm glad it's open, but I think everything should be open. So let's talk about an issue that I think you both might disagree a little bit on, but I think you agree with the premise that big tech has censored conservatives, right? I mean, there's really no doubt about that, and they've done that. And it seems problematic, and I think most people on the right and even in the middle agree with that. So the question is, there's been talk about, reforming big tech censorship, antitrust, changing app store policies, Section 230. But the question is, and it's kind of on both sides of the aisle, what is the solution to the problem we see of censorship? And are you concerned that giving kind of this administration, which doesn't have a very free market lean, I mean, obviously I wouldn't go that far to call them socialists, but they are clearly left to center, the power to investigate and regulate companies? Justin, we'll start with you on this one. I mean, what do you think the solution is? Because I think everyone sees this problem of these big tech companies censoring conservatives.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's a certainty that that's what's happening. And I've always said that Twitter is the worst invention in the history of man. So, I get.
Go tweet that to @Jack.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I will be blocked.
Yes.
So I certainly understand the frustration. And, we debate this sometimes too. Like, we're a policy organization, so we always want to find a solution to the problem. And sometimes I think the solution is more cultural than it is policy, and that policies can be well-intentioned, but can also have unintended consequences. And so I've written about this with antitrust, that that's not the best way, that these companies actually aren't monopolies in the most traditional sense of the word, that the 230 reforms that I know you have championed are very well-intentioned. And first, let me say, I mean, the senator has been tremendous on this idea of innovation freedom. You've started a new caucus to focus on financial innovation. We have worked a lot to position Tennessee to be a leader in innovation. And part of that is grappling with big tech and the impact that they have. But I do worry that giving the Biden administration more control in some of these proposals, giving state attorneys general more control in some of these proposals, could have unintended consequences and could backfire in some ways. So I don't have the silver bullet. I'll readily admit that. I do think that it's not only a policy problem, it's a cultural problem that we have to grapple with. I applaud the senator for her focus on trying to solve some of these problems, but I would caution on anything that does expand government intervention into the market, even against big evil companies that we may dislike.
Yeah. And Senator Blackburn, I mean, what is your take on that?
Yeah, back in 2012, I filed legislation called the Browser Act. This was to deal with online privacy, to begin to give the online user control over their data. The question everyone should ask themselves is, who owns the virtual you? Is it you?
Right.
Is it the platform? Who owns this data? Because you, based on your First Amendment and your privacy rights, your fourth, you should own your data. So my online privacy bill would have one set of rules for the entire internet ecosystem with one regulator, the FTC. It would give you the ability to opt in if you want to share your data. That means you would have to give explicit consent for this platform to use your data, your sensitive data. Then all of your search data, you could opt out and say, you cannot track me, you cannot follow me, you cannot share, you cannot store, you cannot retain my search history. So that would change the business model for these companies, because their valuation is built on what? The number of eyeballs that they attract. So if you diminish what they're able to data harvest and mine and then monetize, then you change their business model. A provision I have also is they cannot boot you off the platform if you choose to protect your privacy. So you do a federal online privacy law that allows protection of your rights and your ownership. You see where that gets you. Mm-hmm. You pass data security, which means when they have a breach, they have to inform you within a 72-hour period of time, not 2 months or 2 years later. They have to immediately inform you. Then you come to Section 230 and change some of the nebulous language to be more specific. This would deal with people that are doing the sex trafficking and human trafficking online. It would deal with fraudulent, pirated products that get sold on Amazon, eBay platforms, aggregate platforms like that. It would deal with censorship, where you have content moderators that just because they don't like something, they'll block you. And so you put some specificity into that language. The very last thing, after you've done all of that, so that you've cleaned up the online environment, then you look at antitrust. And you say, okay, reshaping this, how does it allow for a more competitive marketplace, which is what we all want? How does it allow for innovation? But it should be a very methodical and intentional process that preserves consumer rights, that preserves a competitive marketplace, and allows for future innovation, because we don't know what the next great application will be. That's
true. And the biggest concern with search history is I don't want people to know how many words I don't know, how many words I have to Google to say I don't know what this basic word means. So I don't want anybody to have that search history of mine.
Right.
You're thinking I'm way dumber.
Dictionary.
That's right. But no, that's a great point. So let's go to a little bit more of a fun section here, because one of the things that is great is that you don't always get to show your fun side, right? You're always talking about, very important policy issues. But what is one fun fact about you, Senator Blackburn, or a hobby you enjoy that most people, except for the people closest to you, don't know? I mean, do you have any great, hobbies that you enjoy doing?
Oh, listen, I love to dig in the dirt. I love to garden.
Oh, actually, okay.
Yes, I do. And I love to cook. We have a tradition in our family called Sunday lunch. And every Sunday I cook for our family. And then after church, everybody's running in the door and grabbing their plate and their place at the table. So they enjoy that. And also, I am a pianist. And I enjoy playing the piano when I get an opportunity, not very often now, but really enjoy music.
That's cool. I feel like I don't have an excuse not to cook. If a U.S. Senator can cook, I can't be ordering from Wendy's all the time. She has the time. I certainly have the time. And my dad will love that too. My dad has just kind of started piano a couple years ago, so he's trying to learn, but he's not as good as you or Lamar Alexander for sure.
Well, I'm not very good. I don't get much time to practice anymore. But when I was in high school, I played the guitar and the ukulele, and I actually taught ukulele lessons
Wow.
Somebody who could play tiptoe through the tulips. How about that?
Wow, that is an impressive. Those are some fun facts. No wonder you're so into music. She is far more accomplished than we'll ever be. I think we know that musically and professionally. Yes.
Yeah.
Justin, what about you? Do you have any fun facts or hobbies that you like to do? I mean, you're into some weird stuff.
Kayaking, that's not a weird thing. So I got to kayak in Alaska last week, which was very exciting. So we own kayaks and love to get out on the water as much as possible. And photography. I got into photography a few years ago and like to merge that with my travel. So taking pictures of travel and posting those. So I got a lot of Facebook likes in the last week on our Alaska trip.
Very artsy. I was very impressed by that.
Yeah.
So now we're going to do a fun section called This or That, and we're going to kind of name some fun things, and it's all kind of Tennessee related. And you pick one or the other. You can explain a sentence for why you thought that. So we'll start. Who is going to be better next year in the SEC? Mississippi State or Tennessee? Which team do you think will be better next year? We know they're both going to be bad, but which one will be better? So, Senator Blackburn, are you going to go with your alma mater or your state college?
Each of them have a great year. I think Tennessee might beat them at football because Mississippi State racked up in baseball.
Yes, they
That's
did.
right. Yeah, until they get Dak Prescott.
Ever national champion.
That's right. There you go. And Dak Prescott's not walking through that door, so I'm not sure the football team's going to be quite as good. What about you, Justin? I mean, you're a Tennessee fan. Which one are you picking?
I'm eternally a pessimist when it comes to Tennessee, so I'm going to go with Mississippi State only because that gives me so much to root for when Tennessee actually does better.
I'm not going to tell my grandsons you said that because they wear orange from their head to their toe. And it is all UT.
I'm all UT as well, but they let me down every single year. So if I set the bar really low, anything they do will make me happy.
So they're on their 24th coach in the last 4 years. Is that right? I feel like every year Tennessee's got a new coach they're firing. So we're going to keep it football. Titans related. Who has more receiving yards this year? A.J. Brown or the newly acquired Julio Jones? Which one do you think? I mean,
Julio Jones.
Oh, she's got Julio Jones right away. Is that?
I do too. I think Jones,
Oh.
I think he's going to make a big splash for
I do too. I think he's eating his Wheaties and he's going to go for it.
Yeah, he's a big man. I could not believe how jacked he was. I saw a picture. I'm like, man, he's a strong guy.
I might jinx them, but I do have high hopes for the Titans.
Yeah, they're a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah.
Listen, I do too. I think it's going to be a great year.
Yeah, they have a great coach for Abel. I'm going with A.J. Brown as more yards, by the way. I think, as a fantasy player, that's going to go. They're both great, though. So here's a great one. Better Tennessee conservative country singer. You going John Rich or Kid Rock? I know that we're both friends. You have to pick one. What artist you like listening to more out of those two?
John Rich. Southern rock, I would give it to Kid.
Yeah, I think Kid Rock doesn't get the...
Right. I wouldn't consider him... I know he's gotten into country more, but even when he was playing with Hank and all that stuff, I wouldn't consider him country, really.
Okay, so you got John Rich and then him for rock. I don't think he gets the credit.
John Rich whiskey maker, too.
That's right. Yeah, we got to interview John Rich on the show as well. He's great, but I don't think Kid Rock gets the credit he deserves. I put him the same thing as Nickelback or Florida Georgia Line, where people keep saying, I like them, but they keep saying how bad they are, and they're actually pretty good. People just like to hate on them, but they're actually pretty good. Next one.
I think they're great.
Yes, better Williamson County restaurant, Mayor Bull's or Red Pony? Which one are you going for there?
Mayor Bull.
Mayor Bull. Okay, what about you?
I've not had Red Pony, so
it's great.
Mayor Bull's is delicious. I love it.
Okay, so you like that, but you haven't tried both. Okay, a cooler downtown experience, Market Square in Knoxville or Beale Street in Memphis? They're both great.
They're both great. I was just at Market Square, and I got to tell you, that place is humming.
It is. They have great food there, too. It's surprisingly good in Knoxville. I mean, of course, you can't beat the Memphis barbecue, though, either.
Memphis barbecue is the best.
It is. And people from Nashville try to fight it, but it is Memphis, right?
Well, now we have it. We have Central, so I don't have to drive to Memphis
That's right.
to get my barbecue.
Corky's.
Corky's?
Yeah. I love the original Corky's. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, late at night, Beale Street, I would say.
When you've had a couple of beers, is that what you're saying?
Beers, live music. Market Street, if you're looking for food and kind of a relaxing environment. I like them both, actually. It's hard to pick. Because different environment depending on the time of day.
Very different. And it's so much fun to talk to people. I love what they've done around Beale Street. And the clubs that are there. And it is some of the best music on the face of the earth.
It is.
And if somebody hasn't experienced it, they need to get themselves to Memphis.
That's right.
And they need to go eat at the Rendezvous, and then they need to go clubbing over on Beale Street, and you'll talk about it the rest of your life.
Yeah, go drink at Silky O'Sullivan's. That's always a great time. Yeah. Okay, so the better Tennessee snack, moon pies or goo-goo clusters?
Goo-goos.
Oh, wow.
All about it.
Goo-goo clusters for sure.
Golden goo-goos.
Oh, there you go. Yes, you go that as well?
Oh, yep.
Yeah, boom pies are weird, but people like them. I mean, good
I
for
like
them.
boom pies. Okay.
Listen, I love goo-goos. Sometimes I will award people the Order of the Golden Goo-Goo, which I made up.
Okay. Yeah, they're going to use it as a marketing thing from now on. Yeah, yeah.
It's the best candy on the face of the earth. And so if you do something really superlative, I'll toss you a golden goo-goo and say you're conducted into the Order of the Golden Goo-Goo.
Well, goo clusters.
I've got to figure out how to win this award.
Yeah, goo clusters. I think you have a new spokesman here with Senator Blackburn. You should talk to her. The last one, better former Nashville mayor, Phil Bredesen or Karl Dean? That's a tough one.
Bredesen.
Oh, man. And giving some props to her opponent. Not even close. What about you, Justin?
I'll agree, Bredesen. I mean, it's only gone downhill.
Yeah.
Bredesen was mayor.
Yeah, we talked about we're not sure who's a better mayor, Mayor Briley or Moppet and Buck. So we'll see what happens. But like the questions that we have now are going to be kind of more about what your future and just the future of the Republican Party. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this. The one question I have, I think that every conservative in the country seems to be asking, and even people on the left in anger, is do you think President Trump will run in 2024 for president? And if you do you think he will win? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, Senator Blackburn.
Yeah, I think President Trump, my conversations with him, and by the way, I miss President Donald Trump. I miss him deeply. I think the country misses him deeply right now. The Biden administration has been wrong on every decision they've made. Inflation through the roof. China, Russia, Iran, Paris Climate Accords, inflation, Keystone, Nord Stream, you name it. And now Afghanistan. It is a travesty. But President Trump is very focused on making certain that Republicans retake the House and the Senate in 2022. He is focused on getting us back on an America First agenda, not America Last, which is Biden's agenda. And if he decides to run in 2024, I will be right there with him.
Yeah, you'll support him if he runs.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned Afghanistan. I want to kind of bring this up. I'm interested to hear the situation in Afghanistan, kind of from your view. I mean, obviously you were kind of on the front lines of this, and it seems, and just want to talk about this, but it seems like most people agreed with the idea of pulling out of Afghanistan. But the way it was done, it seems almost. I just saw a new poll. I think like 70% of people disagree with how President Biden did it. So, Senator Black, from your perspective, tell me about what happened in Afghanistan, what went wrong, and what can we do to fix it?
Well, the thing is, it did not have to be this way. President Trump and Secretary Pompeo had negotiated a withdrawal agreement with our partners. So this was done, our NATO partners, our Afghan partners, and they were in process on this. Now, Biden decided he did not want the conditions-based withdrawal, which is conditions on the ground and the threat assessment. And he said, I want a date certain. I want us out by September 11th. That's the date. That means we have to have everybody out of there by August 31st. That's the date. He did this without consulting Senate Armed Services, where I'm a member. He just made the decision. He didn't talk to our allies. He didn't talk to anybody. So now all the G7 is mad at Joe Biden. And I understand that. There is such a thing as righteous anger. And there are a lot of our men and women in uniform, and God bless you if you have fought in the war on terror and have given us 20 years where we did not have an attack on our soil. And now we find ourselves in a position where more troops are in there right now trying to get people out than we had as we were doing the conditions-based withdrawal. This is a travesty of epic proportions. What we are watching is the beginning of the end of the Biden administration because, as you said, his poll numbers, they are tanking. People are incredibly upset that he is leaving Americans behind. We are the United States of America. We do not negotiate with terrorists, and we do not leave our people behind enemy lines. We get everybody out. And it did not have to be this way. Yeah. This is a mess. of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is making.
And his poll numbers are really underwater. I saw the last poll down 14, had a approval rate of 41%, which is really low. So, Justin, what about, you got to give the mainstream media a little bit of credit, right? They came out against President Biden on this right away. I feel like we criticize them a lot, but CNN and MSNBC were even against the withdrawal.
They've actually done their jobs for one. Like most people, I was for an orderly withdrawal from Afghanistan. We've been there for too long without an end in sight. But there's a difference between that orderly withdrawal and chaotic abandonment, which I feel is what we have now. We have some friends in our network who have worked with people there on the ground to help evacuate them. I know you and your staff have been very involved in that. And even seeing the text messages between them and Afghanis who have helped us and American citizens who are there on the ground, and the strife that they're going through to try to get to the airport and get through Taliban checkpoints, it's heartbreaking. And it's heartbreaking to think that we've just completely left them in the lurch. Many of them will die as a result of that. And that's a sad inevitability. And it sends a terrible, terrible message for our enemies elsewhere that we'll do the same. And to our allies elsewhere that will do the same to them. And it's a sad day for America.
Very sad. And for a longer conversation, looking at the participation of the Chinese Communist Party in this, of the Iranian government, of the Russian government.
Yep. Well, Senator Blackburn, I think we can all say from all sides of that, we appreciate all the work you're doing to try to get those people out. I mean, that's a really important thing. And
our team is working 24/7, trying to get people out.
We'll keep it up.
Well, yeah, we appreciate that, and everyone appreciates that. So the last question, let's end on a bipartisan note. So this is for you, Senator Blackburn. Politics aside, who would you say is your best friend in the Senate on the other side of the aisle? So somebody who, I mean, you might not agree with them, but you like to, I don't know, go get coffee, cook them dinner, whatever you end up doing. Who is your best friend on the Democratic side of the Senate, would you say?
Oh,
you can name a couple if you want.
I've done a good bit of work with Jackie Rosen, who's out of Nevada, Kirsten Sinema out of Arizona, and Tammy Duckworth out of Illinois. Tammy and I have done a good bit of work on issues around looking at veterans and our military men and women.
And it shows you, even if you don't disagree with them on policy, you can still be friends with people on the other side. You just want to have respectful conversations and not insult them publicly, right?
Right.
Which a lot of people have done, and we talked about that. So, but before we go, we just want to say thank you so much for joining us, Senator Blackburn. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here. You are an incredible guest, and again, we thank you for all your work in Afghanistan. And even though we might not agree 100% of the time, you're doing a lot of great work, and we appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Pleasure to join you. Thank you.
So until next time, we are the Beacon Center, and we're back with Over-Caffeinated.